I can't wait for you to see this show. Please help me welcome Esteban and the Quartet.
I love it, your energetic crowd. Energetic crowd, just like the second and fourth graders I did a workshop with this morning. Do you guys remember when you were in second and fourth grade? The kids were amazing. They were so energetic. We played this game about writing a story, and different students would raise their hand to put a sentence to the story. And then we illustrated that with ChatGPT, which leads me to my opening. So thank you for indulging me, coming out on your Friday evening to listen to some music. All right. listen to some of the poetry that's inspired by my music, and then listen to and look at the visual arts that were inspired by the poetry and the music. So a little bit of a fusion of sorts, right? That's why I call it artistic fusion, where music, poetry, and visual arts converge. So before we get into the show portion of the evening, let me tell a little bit about what I do, because what I do is a little bit different. So as a pianist and composer, for every piece that I write at the piano, I write a poem about the inspiration behind that piece. And then through the help of ChatGPT and through the help of Paint, which is a photoshopping software, I digitally illustrate the poetry. Does anybody here know what ChatGPT is? Okay, yes, it's taking the world by storm, right? And it's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's very exciting, and we're all learning how to use it. So I'm using it to kind of enhance my art. Okay, now what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna be reading a poem, and then I will be going to the piano to perform the piece that inspired that poem, along with my wonderfully talented ensemble. And then all the while on the screen behind me, you're gonna see the visual arts, the illustrations that I put together with the help of ChatGPT and with Microsoft Paint. Okay, so now the first question of the evening, because it's gonna be interactive. Who here loves the tango? All right, there must be a lot of tango dancers out there. Isn't it like sexy? And then you do this, and it's erotic, and it's romantic, and it's like, wow. Well, this piece that I'm gonna share with you has a little bit of a tango vibe. And when I was looking for a title for the piece, I discovered that in Buenos Aires, Argentina, there's a gazebo in a park, and the people that live around that gazebo go to that gazebo to dance the tango. And the name of that gazebo is called La Glorieta. And so the piece and the poem are called La Glorieta. In the humid summer, she takes my hand, and to the busy dance floor we stand, face to face, under the gazebo of La Glorieta. Like the Iguazu Falls, our blood rushes to the call of the tango under the moonlit sky, dispossessed of sanity, amidst pulses, sweat, and the scent of our skins commingling. Wrapped in the heat of our arms, our legs slither to the music's rhythm like yellow anacondas in a revelry of conquest and subjugation, in the twilight of seduction and consummation. Her arms, my arms, her hands, my hands, glistening boas, touching, coaxing, hissing to the sounds of the bandoneon, thrusting its notes to the coquettish halts until desire coils in heat. Mothers, fathers, and lovers pay homage to the shared delirium of music and laughter in the warmth of the evening air, long ignored by sleeping gray kiskadis and rufous-collared sparrows nesting in the nearby trees. She fills my senses, intoxicates me like the aloha de chaucha we imbibed the night before. This new love, my new love, She fills my senses at la glorieta. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So speaking of sultry, right? Sultry and sexy, wasn't that like ta 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 ta? I'm a hopeless romantic. I'll admit it right off the bat. So speaking of romance, here's another question for you. And you don't have to raise your hand, but who here has been in love? Oh, all right, we have some clappers. Isn't being in love wonderful? It's like the electricity, the chemistry. And they, and especially in high school, they walk in and then somebody turns on a fan and their hair blows in the back. And then somebody turns on the fog machine and they walk in. And you're like, I've been in love plenty of times. 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, definitely 12th grade. I'm kidding. It was infatuation, but it felt like love at the time. And that's where this next song takes us. This next song takes us into romance. It takes us into love, into the Hallmark Channel. But this one is between a couple that lives in a Mexican hacienda in early 1900s Mexico, a few miles out in the desert under the star-filled night. And the name of this hacienda is called Casa Manzanillo. We dance under the moonless night, hand in hand, arm in arm, cloaked by a blanket of diamonds that casts a summer spell, whispering the melody of your name. O cloudless, star-filled night, canvas of 1,000 flames, a chorus of eyes that gives rise to passion flowers singing your name with the fragrance of a desert rain. Like the bloom of a whisker bush, I am the sun to your magenta petals, you the brush that paints our house into a home, our love into colors of endless sunsets. Let us waltz to the music at Casa Manzanillo, where stucco walls glow like lanterns in the night, where clay tiles are kissed by the heat of the sun, where purple blooming bougainvillea flows into the courtyard like a silent song. Embrace the sky heavy with stars, where the chorus of twinkles is wrapped in the softness of luminarias, each flicker a whisper of love that holds us captive into the night. My breath brushes against your cheek. We shiver, not from the chill of the night, but from the closeness of our hearts, from the touch of our hands, from the taste of the air that we breathe. Sweet universe of sun and stars, of deserts and mountains far beyond, you nestle our hearts, our home, into a comet's tail that carries our story across the immortal skies. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, guess what? I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Do we have anybody from El Paso here? Oh, my cousins, my sisters, my brother-in-laws, my more cousins, my cousins' husbands, tíos, tías, abuelos, no, they're dead. Tíos. Anyway, growing up in El Paso was hilarious and it was fun. And one of my favorite things to do is in my parents' home, on the side of the house, there was this dirt patch. And there was this water hose connected to the spigot. And as a little kid, for those of you who have little boys or who have had little boys, you know what this is all about. I'd turn on the water and I'd make lots of mud. And then I'd bring out my Tonka toys and my Hot Wheels. And then I would sit in that mud and I'd make little mud roadways and mud houses and just let my imagination go. It's all about being a little kid. And when I wrote this next piece, it reminded me a lot about being that 7-8-year-old kid playing in the mud. And I called the piece Sandbox. Can you see me? I had fun making that picture. Boy in the sandbox throws magical dust into the air. With a mighty grunt, a gazillion granules float to the ground and a bucket of water topples. Swoosh! Rushes like a river into the desert, bringing to life a king and queen with knights and horses around a moat guarding the castle. And then, monsters rise from the depths of the ground to flatten the kingdom built by two little hands that gave life to the village being ruthlessly trampled by roaring mud creatures with 5 little finger-like legs. And then Tonkas and Hot Wheels of Chevy cars and fire trucks with siren sounds make their way to the hilltop to see a house catching on fire. And the mama is yelling for the little boy to get out of the house till the fire truck throws a bucket of water that turns the house into a mound of mushy mud to turn off the fire. And then the Chevy car gets cleaned with a dip in the bucket. And the boy that escaped the burning house drives to the racetrack that was recently built in the shape of a giant circle with mud walls to keep the car from going off track because it's so fast. And then the fireman's stand by the fire truck to make sure the car doesn't catch like fire because they do on TV, but it's too late because the car catches on fire. And then the fire truck rides into the middle of the track, crashing through the wall with a big explosion whispered into dirt as more water pours from the water hose till Muji magic mud turns off the fire. And then spittle rains on the track because the fire truck's muffler is so very loud, but it gives it special powers to fly over the Keen's village that was recently destroyed in order to get back to the fire station where they live. And then the firemen's can rest after a very long day because they're tired, hungry, and thirsty, and it's time to eat, and they all have mud on their boots and shirts, and their mamas are going to give them a hug, then tell them to go take a bath before they go to sleep. The piece of A Little Melancholy, did it take you back to being a kid? Those were the days, right? But you know what? It's all here and here. You can always be a kid at heart and in your mind. So another thing, of course, a lot of my inspiration comes from El Paso because I grew up there. And another thing I loved to do in the summer is I loved to play in mulberry trees. And I know you have them here in Alamogordo because I've seen them. But for those of you who don't know what mulberry trees are, they do really well in heat, they do really well without a lot of water, and they make great shade trees in the summer because they have these giant green leaves. And I loved to be a little kid going up and climbing those trees. It felt like a jungle in the summer because there's so many green leaves. And then once in a while, of course, I'd get tired and I'd come back down from the tree and I'd lay down, usually on weeds because we had a lot of weeds in El Paso. Do you have weeds here in Alamogordo? So you can relate. So I would lay down the weeds like, oh, ow. But I was tired. And I'd look up at the tree and the branches, and occasionally I'd see those tiny little ants climbing up the trunk of the tree. I never knew why they did that. I do know now, but that's another question. But it was so nice. And then occasionally, the sun rays would break through the leaves because there was a little bit of a breeze, and the sun would hit me in the eyes. And I'd close my eyes, and the next thing I know is that there's shadows dancing on my eyelids. And when I wrote this next song, it reminded me a lot about being that little kid under the tree. And I called it Dancing Shadows. The leaves on the mulberry tree are greener than my green Crayola, greener than the unpickled jalapenos my father likes to eat, or the buttered peas my mother made for lunch today. The leaves flutter up and down like a row of dark socks on a crowded summer clothesline, dancing to the thumping of the city's desert wind playing their favorite song. I close my eyes under the tree where I lie on grass that wrestles with knotweed, spurge, and dandelions, all of them more yellow than green, all of them thirsty, but not the tree. The flailing leaves move back and forth to let the sun rays ride their ridges, landing hand puppets on my eyes of dancing shadows and thunder clouds. And as the clock ticks through this school-free summer, I smile, ooh and ah, at how the shadows dance in the light of day, but in a blink of an eye, scatter away. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, I shared music with you about passion, right? I shared music with you about being in love. But you know what? Love has a challenging side too. Uh-oh. It's when your heart is broken. You don't have to raise your hands, but who here has had your heart broken? Yeah, I know. It's painful, isn't it? And there's this void here, and it's like, and you cry on your pillow, you find somebody you want to talk to. But you know, there comes a point where you've done your crying, you've done your counseling, and you finally say, you know what? It's time for me to move on. It's time, I've cried enough. I need to start a new chapter. And that's where this next piece starts. It's called Beginnings. A broken heart reconciles like a lone purple hyacinth that lies dormant on rocky hills, escaping the summer heat to conceal the agony born of a shattered love. Its life once thrived, bloom to purple bloom, on the strength of spring, the embrace of its leaves, roots deep in the earth, its fragrance unseen. Early summer is resolute. In gathering its petals to throw them to the wind, they disappear into the distance, leaving their heart in the ground, wrapped in darkness, trying to heal. In cold night's silent grip, it looks deeper into itself to seal its lonely wounds as the eye of winter hovers while the hyacinth readies the hints of a new love ahead. The day calls out its colors to flower alone on stony slopes, each stem stretching higher, each leaf getting stronger, flourishing in solitude's soil in defiance of the barren ground. you. You will be happy to know that I have recovered from my broken heart. Plural. Okay, so in my backyard I have sage bushes. Does anybody have sage bushes in their backyard? And don't they smell so good? And then they have these little blooms, right? The sage bushes I have these little red blooms. They're about this tiny, and they have these little pink blooms too. And if you know the sage bushes, they have lots of little tiny branches, so you have lots of blooms. And when I'm sitting in my living room looking out the window in the backyard, every once in a while, a butterfly comes into my backyard. Does this look like a butterfly? And it comes in, right? It comes in, and I'm so mesmerized. And then, it hovers around my sage, blooming sage, and then it decides to fly away. And I'm like, oh, wow, that was cool. And butterflies are so magical, right? And they relax me, they make me happy, especially the monarchs that have these black and orange, fiery orange kind of designs. And that's where this next piece takes us. It's called Butterfly Garden. You flutter about with your wings outstretched, taking your time to smell the flowers that grow in my garden. My blooming coyote mint, my crimson columbine, my autumn sage and milkweed. Like a toddler learning to walk, you teeter and totter into a world of colors and scents and nectar and sun with a toothless smile, giggling at the sight of flowers that await your hugs and kisses. You come in ones and twos, but if I'm lucky, sometimes threes. People know you by name. Monarch, painted lady, little sulfur, but I only know you by yellows and greens and blues and browns and fiery orange. You lift my spirits like the wind that lifts a kite that soars into the sky. Like a heavy rain on a mountain brush fire, you douse the troubles of my day. You quench my thirst like a glass of ice-cold lemonade. Who are you, sweet butterfly? Spirit? Friend? Wise old soul? A freak of nature? A happy accident? We all seek the Holy Grail, busily going from day to day, drive to work, sign the papers, feed the children, pay the tax man, buy the groceries. It never ends. But you dance from flower to flower, unhurried, unworried, untroubled by tomorrow, only embracing your today. From the confines of your cocoon, you broke free to explore your world from dawn until dusk, to teach me the simplest of lessons. Sometimes it's best to be just like you. Thank you. Thank you. We have reached our halfway point. So we are going to take a 15-minute break. Please stretch your legs, grab some fresh air, and we'll see you back in a little bit. Okay, we are back. We are back. I hope that you enjoyed your break, stretched your legs, got some fresh air, got some popcorn, grabbed a snack. I'm looking forward to sharing what's the next half hour. So I've got to tell you something about how I write music. So when I write music, my mind goes all different kinds of places. I think it's my attention deficit disorder. I was a late diagnosee. But I'm at the piano, I'm playing, and then it's like, what did I have for lunch yesterday? I wish I had a dog. Just random thoughts. So as I was writing this next piece, it had a really classical flavor to it. And so I started thinking about Beethoven. I started thinking about Mozart. I started thinking about when Mozart was a little kid, 6 years old, playing in front of the King and Queen of England. And then this random thought, a very philosophical thought crossed my mind, like, what would it have been like if Mozart had been Mexican? Those are the thoughts that cross my mind when I play the piano. And guess what? I wrote a poem that answers that very question. So next time your grandson or your son asks you, Mom, Grandma, what would it have been like if Mozart had been Mexican? You are going to know the answer. The pieces of the poem are called Mexican Minuet. If Mozart were Mexican, he'd wear a straw hat and throw a fiesta for his familia and amigos. He'd put on his fanciest huaraches and hang a giant-sized piano piñata filled with lots of candy and cacahuates and nickels and dimes. Music, music, let's play music. If Mozart were Mexican, he'd decorate his fiesta with multicolored papel picado streaming from tree to tree, towering over the food table in large vases with giant red, pink, and yellow paper flowers. Amigos, bring out the piano. Do you like my accent? Bring out the piano. If Mozart were Mexican, he'd serve enchiladas and chile rellenos with a side of pinto beans and Spanish rice, offering agua frescas like horchata, jamaica, and tamarindo. And he'd top it off with flan, churros, tamales de dulce, and maybe a little tequila too. I will play this song for you. If Mozart were Mexican, he'd be throwing a fiesta as often as he could, playing Mexican Minuet on his grand piano in the backyard. His mama and papa, hermanos, abuelitos, primos, sobrinos, and neighbors would be there too, dancing, laughing, talking, but only if Mozart were Mexican. Thank you. Wasn't that a fun piece? You know, music has a way of taking us through so many different shades of life's experiences, right? And this next piece takes us into a more somber and much deeper phase. When I was writing this next piece, I tapped into some chords that I said, wow, that was emotionally painful. And as I continued exploring that, I started seeing visions of a man at the end of his life, someone who had lived a life of hard knocks, falling down but getting back up, falling down and just saying, I can do it, and trying to live his life as best as he could. So by the time he reached the end of his life, he was exhausted. And we've all been there, right? We're just like, oh gosh. And he was closing his eyes for the last time, taking his last breath. And the name of this song and this poem are called Wings of an Angel. My lungs no longer breathe the colors of painted desert skies. My heart no longer beats memories of yesterday's shadows. My feet no longer skip to the top of honey-dipped rainbows. My eyes no longer seek the nectar of rose-hued tomorrows. I close the door to a life where puzzle pieces didn't fit, where I fell in love with a kindness that pushed me to life's edge, where the smiling face in the mirror cried out to me in pain, calling me to escape the knots of web-like threads. I say farewell to a chapter in which I made music to save my life, in which I broke free from the iron cage forged by the world's creation, in which I cradled solitude inside my dream to calm this unsettled mind, in which I dared a laugh in exchange for a taste of love's salvation. In my aloneness, in darkness, the gateway between sleep and death, in a realm of blood and bruises, numbness and hushed unknowns, I found myself wondering if I'd been forsaken in death, facing another day, another night with a chorus of human groans. And like a rush of warm wind on a bitter cold starless night, I am lifted into this place of rolling hills that cushion the sun, of cheerful rivers that surround themselves in the purple of lilac blooms, of white-winged doves in the sky playing games that have just begun. Wrapped in snow-like brilliance, the wings of an angel awaken my soul, in cadence with hues that shimmer from the light that envelops the fold. A celestial embrace with a familiar warmth and wordless thoughts of elation. Welcome me back to my original home, just as my dreams had foretold. Thank you. Thank you. So, when I was growing up in El Paso, especially in my teen years, I remember this really well. We had big thunderstorms. And I'm sure you have them here in Alamogordo, right? Remember how scary they are? I remember the clouds would come in the late afternoon, these huge clouds, just dark and angry. And then you had these rumbles, and they started getting closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, rain. And we lived right at the base of the Franklin Mountains. So we had rain coming down the street and lightning crashing and thunder roaring. I remember the windows would rattle. And when you're like 14, 15, it's like, oh, I kind of like this, but it's a little bit too much. But then the storm would leave the next morning, remember? And the clouds would disappear, and then the sun would shine. And because we lived at the base of the Franklin Mountains, I remember the next few days, you smell that desert air, right? The creosote, the bushes, and then the mountains start turning green, and the beryl cactus start blooming. And it's such a beautiful occasion for the mountains. Well, this next piece is all about celebrating the spring in the desert, the Southwest, because that's what I had in mind. And it's celebrating it with that special someone in your life in the comfort of your backyard. And it's called Garden Waltz. From atop the hacienda's eaves, the bougainvillea cascades a smile in hues of fuchsia and rose. It drapes itself on adobe walls that court the backyard garden and heralds the desert spring to this sun-kissed, stone-filled earth. Wrapped in the arm of its shadow, I stand heart to heart with my sweet love on pavers of terracotta. Colors of spring surround us and paint the air with sage perfume as our eyes touch canyon flora that weave through rocky hills. Petals of girasol rojos and western primroses celebrate the sun's enveloping fold. The ocotillo and cholla rise and stretch their blooms to drink the air, calling the Sonoran bumblebees to take their nectar home. Beneath the twined honey mesquite, the branches embroidered like delicate lace, its small corncob flowers stir. They join our waltz to the flutter of giant swallowtails as we glide and dip in step to greet nature's bright rebirth.
Thank you. So, thank you very much. So, I was all of 18 years old, and my mom and dad took me in their truck to the Greyhound bus station in downtown El Paso. And I went to college in Northern California, just a 2-hour drive from San Francisco north. And I was on my own for the first time. It was both exciting and frightening. It's now I had to make my decisions for myself. And I have to admit, and I'm not going to give you all the details, but I had a tough time trying to figure myself out. I'm sure we've all been there, right? You know, you're 18 years old and you have life's big questions in front of you. But I did. And when I was feeling particularly depressed, I would go down to San Francisco and sit by the bay and look at the Golden Gate. And if you know San Francisco, it's always cloudy or rainy or misty, and the water there by the Golden Gate was pretty rough. But somehow, feeling the way I did and looking at the weather there, it made me feel I wasn't alone. And when I wrote this next song, it reminded me about being there at the Golden Gate Bridge, looking at the water, being by myself with my thoughts. And I called this piece San Francisco Rain. I stand at your shores, touched by the drops that sink my salt and heaviness into your glistening sand. In solitude I come, shivering and cold, bearing no gifts, wearing no smile, seeking a friend in this Golden Gate Strait to carry the burden that slows my journey down. Escape from the closet, a good book that glares, no friend to keep me company, no sun to keep me warm. Your golden towers, your restless waters call my soul to your bridge. Shrouded in mist, temple for the lonely, dreamscape of the forlorn. You hold the key to the heaven I seek, a turn of the lock to open death's door. But like the gentle touch of my mother's hand, the drops of your rain soothe me. It is a patter that washes over and gives me strength to go forward again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a hopeless romantic, right? So I love the Hallmark Channel. Anybody else? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Any men out there? No. Okay, well, fine. Well, I love the Hallmark Channel at Christmas time especially. It's like, oh my God, a few days before Christmas and they've broken up? Oh my God, are they ever gonna get back together? And I start stressing out. I'm there with my popcorn. It's like, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. And then, miracle of miracles. And I'm always surprised. They get back together before Christmas. And I go, yes, yes. Anyway, this next poem is about a love poem again, because I'm a romantic. You know, being a pianist and being able to write at the piano, I go there. It has its benefits. I go there, you know, I unleash my emotions and my angst, and it has saved me so much money in therapy. Anyway, so this next poem is another love poem. And these two people, do you ever, they're at dinner. They're at dinner and something happens. And they know at that moment over dinner, they are destined to be with each other. And it's called Dinner for Two. My weightless breath in the light of night exhales across the table from where you sit, eye to eye. Our fingers touch and unleash emotions of ethereal bliss. A zinnia stands quietly between us, perched in a vase of alabaster dreams, conducting this evening's song of love with its chorus of petals in sweet velvet red. Through the prism of crystal that cradles its flicker, the votive candle's flame mirrors your gaze, shoots it like a meteor into the sky to dance with the colors of my immortal flame. Forks on the left, spoons on the right, wine glasses stand as if on holy ground. In silence, they see our story unfold, reflecting the sparkle of our hearts unbound. The waiter is ready to pull out his pad, to welcome his guest and fill glasses with water. Held back by the sacred moment at hand, he moves on in service of another. Lost in your presence and you in mine, free from this time-stamped world. There's no yesterday, no tomorrow, no morning or night, forever in the moment, embraced by the now. Sing your lullaby to me like a siren of lore. Let us lose ourselves in the land of our dreams. Let us build a home of adobe and wood, plant a tree from which spotted towhees can sing. I knew you before the sun was born. You knew me before the stars flickered above. We followed through on a promise we made that at a dinner for two, we would fall in love. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, time has gone by so fast. We're nearing the end of our show. And before I play my last piece for you and read my last poem for you, I want to again thank everyone for coming this evening. I hope that you've enjoyed some good music, some good poetry. I hope that I have made the start of your weekend just a little brighter, right? Okay, with that in mind, I will leave you with one final poem which really reflects what music does for me, and I hope that it did that for you today. It's called Fly With Me, because music allows me to fly to different places that I wouldn't have otherwise. If I could capture a moment when all that I know is wind and sky, if I could soar where crispness fills the air, where light fills my soul and clouds caress the softness of my wings, if I could reach for the sky, then dive down again with the currents and then reach high once again with each beat of my heart, feeling, knowing, touching the experience. Freedom, peacefulness, tenderness, passion, and love. If I could fly, it is because I have indeed flown, and that which has taken me there has been music. Come, fly with me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.